Okay, we're filming. Crazy story. I've just got out of jail about 45 minutes ago. I've been in there for 4 days, and it is absolutely harrowing what is happening in there. Um, you have to forgive me. The last time I had water was on the 27th of this month. Not because they didn't offer water or food in the prisons, it's because I quickly realized these people are absolutely crazy. Hence why I was in there in the first place, and that the only way to get out, if they intended to keep me a long time, would be to not take anything from them. So, water, food. The last time I had food is when they transported me from one prison to the next. In the north of Lebanon in Tripoli, I was in a secret police station there for 1 day, and then I've been 3 days here in the Ministry of Defence's dungeon. And then before that, before I went to Tripoli, I was briefly in two military compounds. So water was at 12 o'clock on the 27th, which was in the military compound before I left for the Tripoli secret police station. And then the last time I had food was when they transported me on the 28th to the Beirut station from food in my own bag in the vehicle. They let me access my stuff. So um, I don't know. I'm going to try and remember everything. The reason I wanted to do this now without having a shower, without having any food or any drink, is so that it remains in my mind. If I go to sleep, I'm going to pass out. I'm not going to wake up for 20 hours and I might forget details. And even now, dehydrated and hungry, I will try my best to remember everything and try and be as systematic as possible. Lebanon, for me now, is the sickest country in the world. Now, I used to say very openly, I am very frank and open with people, which is sometimes a problem. It sometimes exacerbates issues because people in positions of authority, soldiers, police, they want to feel like they're in control. They want to take people from the streets and they want you to submit to them. It's their nature. It's sick. So as someone that frankly tells people what they think, it may not always help the situation, but I don't care. I stand firm to my beliefs. I'm always, always, always pro freedom of expression, freedom of speech, and I believe that if you submit once, you put them in a position where they own you. You become their dog, you become their wretch, and I would never do that. Hence, what has just happened. So let me explain to you. I was leaving Lebanon for Syria on the 27th. This was my plan. And there are two borders in the north. You have one along the waterfront called Arida, and then the one that I was heading for, which I cannot remember the name of now, but it is to the right of Arida if you look at a map. So if you Arida is in Lebanon, and after you cross the border, the first city will be Tartus on the coast. The other border is maybe 30 minutes drive away, and that takes you to a lot of the mountain areas where the famous castle Chevalier is, which is the first or second biggest Templar castle in the country, which is why I was heading there. So I got a minibus from my guest house in the center of Tripoli, and I went halfway and changed to a shared taxi where other passengers get on and off on their way to this border. The moment I get to this border, the taxi driver stops. He talks briefly to someone in some adjacent cafes, and then a military vehicle pulls up behind us. They start shouting at this man in Arabic, and then they say to me in sign language, border closed. They put their hands like that and they say closed, and then they say arida arida, but they weren't impolite. So it was a false sort of sense of security I had. I thought they were just being nice, as you would expect in any country. Like the whole circumstance I'm about to explain to you is absolutely insane. And I will try not to use profanities. These people are crazy. And I've said to them, and I've said to people before, many years ago I was detained in Israel. And until this day, that was the sickest experience I've had, having not done anything. I was dragged from the airport floor into a room. They decoded all my data from my laptop and my phone. They even broke the back of the laptop. They took all my stuff, put it in a trash bag, threw it across the airport floor, and said verbatim, I don't give a fuck about any of you, about you or any of these people. They also took all my clothes off and made me stand in there naked, just one of their psychological humiliation strategies. Or they hope that it will be humiliation. This is worse. This is 100% worse. Okay, so instead of saying taking me to the Arida border, which is what they said the border's closed. Basically, get in the back of the car. They were all smiley, and we will just drive you to the Arida border, which is something that I've certainly experienced in the past before. I've traveled to 120 countries, and if a mistake is made, if something is closed, or often military will just stop when you're hiking, and they say, "Hey, man, we'll give you a lift." So it's not something that's uncommon. They didn't take me to the border. Instead, they took me to this wretched little outpost where there's maybe 2 dozen soldiers, and they began to take all my stuff out of my bag for fun, for curiosity, whatever. Doesn't really matter. Just the ignorance of dumb, wretched soldiers, in this case, Lebanese soldiers, just having a load of fun. So it's baking hot. It's about 1 o'clock at this point, and I was kept there for 2 hours while they just laughed, humiliated me, made jokes, took all my stuff out of my bag, didn't put it back in properly. And then they took me to the big, big military base. I have absolutely no idea where that was. It was just, I'm assuming, a 45-minute drive from the original compound in any direction. I have no idea. I didn't have a concept of time until this morning when I was released from Beirut. Um, Now, these guys are really bad. This was the point where you realize that you give people a uniform and you give people guns that shouldn't have them, and all hell could break loose. In the future, you put these people in a position where there are lives at stake. These people are fucking sick. Excuse my language. So, firstly, they kept on trying to take my passport and all this kind of stuff, and I refused because I haven't done anything wrong. We live in a world in the West, and not just in the West, in places like Southeast Asia, all kinds of countries in the world where there's etiquette, where you have a sense of right, especially when you've done absolutely nothing wrong. At this point, I've literally just been scooped off the street by soldiers for their own personal amusement. But they took me to this second base, and there were some high-ranking soldiers, presumably. And the entire time, they basically told me to shut the fuck up. You speak too much. They emptied all my stuff over the floor again, but this time, really, just in a crazier fashion than the original soldiers. We're talking tents everywhere, pegs everywhere. All my stuff was laid out. And then they found a load of SIM cards because I travel a lot. And of course, I've been to 120 countries. So if I have a SIM card for a country that I may return to, I may well use it again. So you just keep it in a little bag. But this guy got it into his head because he's bored out of his mind and he's an egotistical little wretch. And I wasn't, of course, playing ball in the way that he would have liked. I'm not going to submit. So that made him more pissed off. He convinced himself that I was a spy or a journalist. I have like 30 SIM cards. On top of that, I have loads of passport photos because often I need to use them for a visa at a border. I have photocopy scans, of course, which is normal for travelers, and little passport photos. And some of the pictures are different because some of them were of me like 2 years ago or 5 years ago or whatever. So he lines them all up. This took hours. He lines all my stuff up, almost like what you'd see when police confiscate narcotics at a customs border. Oh, look at all what we found. He's got 2 phones. Isn't that suspicious? He's got 2 hard drives. He's got all these passport photos. They lined all the SIM cards up individually. Then they took me after those hours to the Tripoli secret police station. And the Tripoli secret police station is basically when they interrogate people. And similarly to what was going to happen in Beirut, I was put in a cell with, I guess, important prisoners. So usually like Lebanese, intellectual Lebanese people. I was speaking to an elderly gentleman that said he worked for the prime minister at one point. He was seemingly very well educated, well dressed, fluent in English. The kinds of people that were in the cell for the most part were actually Lebanese soldiers that had some problem with other Lebanese soldiers, or political prisoners. This guy was a Yemeni Saudi, Lebanese, so triple nationality, I guess, and then there were other people of various other dispositions, but mostly everyone was of what you call like an intellectual nature. And in this place, they treated people like absolute dirt. And, we are in the better position, but in the dungeon, they have an elevator that goes down similarly to Beirut, which is going to be the most, which is going to be the brunt, the focus of this video. And I'm trying to speak quickly. I'm trying to articulate everything that I remember in the order that I remember it, just for a record for people that are interested in watching this. If this gets shared, maybe I'll even email some NGOs and tell them what's happening in this Beirut jail, prison, interrogation center, whatever you want to call it. These people are absolutely sick. They're completely desensitized to the reality. And for sure, they're not the only people in the world that work in these positions that probably undertake these sorts of tasks everywhere, no doubt. And Israel is certainly no exception. But on my experience now, personally, from what I've experienced in the world, I've been kidnapped before in Bolivia. I've had my drink spiked. I've had all kinds of horrible things happen to me. Lebanese are the worst by far. I will never, ever, 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 ever come back to this country. I consider it now the sickest place above Israel on my personal list. And anyway, so I will continue on with the story. So, secret police station, Tripoli. Again, they went through all my stuff. They confiscate your phones. They confiscate your essentially anything digital, electronic. And they want the passwords to your phones. They didn't call the embassy. They even have in English, although in bad English, a sign from some barrister or lawyer association in Lebanon that outlines the law, Lebanese law, with respect to how you can treat detainees and what they have the right to claim, i.e. a solicitor, a phone call. I had a right to a phone call. They refused to give me the phone call. They lied to me time and time again. They said, you'll be out in an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours. Just give me the passwords to your phone. Give me the passwords to your phone. I didn't want to give them the passwords to my phones and my laptop and all that stuff because, of course, it's also the passwords to many other things that are private and personal and important, like banks, etc. So why would I get? I've done nothing wrong. So why should I have the? Why should I be doing that? So I refused, and they kept me there with this other gentleman who was also to be transferred after me to the secret police station in Beirut, which is inside the Ministry of Defense headquarters in their basement. They have an entire interrogation center in the basement of which they have between 120 to 160 people, which is what I've been told by my cellmates in the privileged part of the prison who were at one point transferred from those dungeons to the top. So I stayed for a day in Tripoli. I then refused I quickly realized that I'm not going to give them anything. So I refused to drink and I refused to eat. And to this point, I have not drunk anything. When I ate was when they transferred me in that morning of the 28th, so one day later, to the Beirut jail, which I've just come out of. So the last time I had food was on the morning of the 28th. Today, right now, it's the 30th and it's about 1:30 p.m. I haven't had anything to drink since the 28th, 27th, sorry, nothing. So, what else was happening? Yeah, so they constantly lied. None of my rights. I requested a lawyer. They wouldn't give it to me. I requested a phone call, as is my right. They wouldn't give it to me. They said they called the embassy. They definitely didn't call the embassy because they called the embassy when I was in Beirut, and that was the first time I spoke to them. So lies, lies, lies. Many of the people were just sickeningly behaved. We had a window which looked out of the cell onto the entrance, because again, it's the privileged cell where the important people are kept, probably the journalists, the terrorists, the political prisoners. So there was constantly people walking by, and if I would make eye contact with some of them, they would come up to the cell and bark at me in Arabic, and I wouldn't change my position. I didn't submit in any way. I would tell them to their face that I think they're sick. I told them that I think they're comparable to Mossad and the sickest of Israeli soldiers and all sorts of things like that. And I still wouldn't give them my phone IDs, which pissed them off. And they would just lie to me constantly. When we wanted the toilet, there was an example where in the morning of the 28th, early in the morning, the old man, he was very, very senior, needed to use the bathroom, and he banged on the door for about an hour and they just couldn't be bothered to open the door for him. The water that they gave was from bottles that were just reused by all the inmates that would come in and out of the jail cells. So they were all slurping on these bottles. They would just refill it with the tap water in the toilets and then give it to people. They did give a little bit of food, but I refused to eat the food after about 10 p.m. on the 27th when I went in. And that's basically what happened there. A secret police station. I spoke to the old elderly man about what this place is, and it's essentially a place where political detainees go. Anyone, and it's military branch. This isn't police. This is military interrogation police, essentially, whatever that exactly means. So, 28th at 12 o'clock, they drove me to Beirut. Comically enough, just to throw something else into the fray. It goes through a town called Junau or some place like this, which is 30 minutes from Beirut, heading north towards Tripoli. And it's a kind of a big, ugly beach kind of town area, just a concrete jungle. And the guy actually stopped to buy a CD. The guy in the military van, who was completely insane, driving at high speed, stopped to buy a CD off one of these sellers on the street. Happened to be the same guy I walked past when I made a day trip to the place some days before from Tripoli, and he made eye contact with me in the car, and he knew that he was the guy that tried to help me cross the road, because it's very difficult to cross the highway to the other side, because they have like one bridge or one underground pass every 3 or 4 kilometers, because the place is an absolutely disgusting concrete jungle. And actually I ranked that the worst place I've ever visited probably in my life for where we are in the world. It was absolutely fucking awful. Anyway, so we kept driving to Beirut, and I was told by the guys, another sadistic lie in the Tripoli jail, that I would be transferred now to Beirut to a hotel. That's what they said. They said I would leave. They were just taking me to Beirut. I could get out and go to a hotel. Essentially, that is what they told me. Of course, that's not what happened. They drove us to the Ministry of Defense, or me to the Ministry of Defense. Then we went in there. They took all this stuff out of my bag again, and every single thing they itemized. So every single SIM card in that pouch, they wrote the number down manually on a piece of paper, the number on the back of every single one of those SIM cards. Every single thing that they deemed important was itemized, sealed, in a way that you imagine happens in a jail. And then I had to take all my clothes off. They wanted me to take everything off, including my boxers, for some sort of, I guess, anal search, and I totally refused that. And I actually would have got super violent if they tried that. That would have been the point where I would have thrown serious hands, and I would not care in any way about going in jail for months or years if that was the case. You have to stand up for your principles. The moment you submit and you become their dogs, you become a nothing in this world. So I had to take all my clothes off, and the thing that I clocked immediately, and the thing that you could say aroused a sense of survival in me, is the moment we pulled up to the interrogation centre in the military compound and the door was opened. The soldiers that came out were blatant homosexuals. Like, they're wearing eyeliner. They're just completely camp, completely gay. And I knew, I'm smart enough to realize exactly what they're doing. They use, probably for a multitude of reasons, homosexuals only inside of the interrogation centers. So all of the soldiers, so all of the kind of low level ranking soldiers that are opening the doors, itemizing your stuff, taking your clothes off, giving you the right to go to the toilet, feeding people the food, they are all homosexual, and they're all literally wearing nail varnish and eyeliners like the campus guys you've ever seen. And this is to intimidate all the male prisoners, because no one wants to get fucking raped in jail, do they? So they have all these homosexuals there, and also at the same time, because they're so effeminate, I guess it calms people down. That's at least something that I've heard on YouTube videos before, when you watch videos about jail cells or political scenarios such as this. So all of them are homosexuals. So I was on red alert immediately. I knew I had to stand up for my rights and basically still, not be a submissive dog, but I can't be too aggressive like I was being with the soldiers in the first and second compound, which I don't regret in any way. So anyway, they itemized my stuff, and then they put me in a cell, and the cell was on the same floor. This is the privileged cell. This is the best cell in the entire interrogation center. And inside this cell, I'm going to remember everyone that we have there now. We have one German Turkish guy and his Turkish business partner. His Turkish business partner was 68 years old. This German Turkish man was around 55 or 56, he said. Then we had a Iraqi guy that was, can't remember how old he was, maybe 40 years old. And similarly, a Lebanese guy that was 40 years old. The Iraqi guy had been living in Lebanon. The Lebanese guy was pure Lebanese, no other nationality as far as I'm aware. Then we had a doctor who was 73 years old. And I'll go into why they were arrested in a second. Who else did we have? We had the Iraqi, we had the doctor, we had the Turkish German, the Turkish guy. One more gentleman before the other guy from Tripoli that I was sharing the cell with arrived. So the guy that essentially enabled us to have this cell is the son of a very important businessman here in Beirut. He's a millionaire, and he crashed his Porsche 911 GTS, and unfortunately during that accident someone was killed. And so he had been in that jail for pushing on, he said, 150 days. So 36 nights, yeah, so over 5 months. And he was originally, like everybody else, in the basement, which apparently, according to them, has 120 to 160 people. There is no window. There is no light. Even in high security prisons, people, I guess, from time to time, once a week, are allowed to walk around in the courtyard. These people have no access to fresh air, the outside world, any daylight whatsoever. They have no windows down there at all. And everyone's down there, all kinds of nationalities, a few Europeans, lots of Lebanese, Turkish, mainly Syrian, and they also have children down there as well. That's what they said. And these people have no access to the outside world. And legally, they're allowed to keep people in this facility, this interrogation facility, for 6 months. But what they do, like what they did with me, is, and the amount of time is irrelevant, they just transfer people from one facility to the next, and the time just resets. These people have absolutely no rights whatsoever. So in our room, we were very lucky. The Lebanese guy's father was essentially paying off people in the prison. And so all day, for the 4 days that I was there, was it 4 days there or 3 days? I arrived on the 28th, 29th, so 3 days in the first place, 1 day in the second place, plus the 2 military compounds. It was just food delivery all day, good quality food being delivered all day, because this guy was a businessman, the son of a very wealthy businessman. And he was asked, when they gave him this room, which was actually a room where lawyers are supposed to interview any, some of the inmates. He got the whole room to himself and was asked, "Would you like to invite anyone else up, your friends, people that you met down in in the dungeons when he was there. So he invited up very kindly all of the people that he was essentially being bunked with, people that I've just described to you now. Most of these people spoke English. Obviously, some of them are very intellectual, they're academics. We have a doctor there who's 73 years old. And then the day after I arrived, on the 29th, they brought the educated chap from Tripoli to join the cell as well. And this room there was only enough space in the first compartment of the room. So imagine you have the glass sheet and a door where ordinarily the lawyer would be on one side of the door and the prisoner would be on the other side. So imagine just a room in your mind that would be built and purposed for that. So 4 guys were sleeping, one under the desk, who was the son of the businessman, and then 3 others in that area. And then in the other area, there was then 4 of us when the Tripoli guy arrived, and I was on top of the desk in the other room. They had AC, but it was dripping everywhere. And in terms of, the standard from what I imagine was down in the dungeon or from what you see in other prisons, this was the best, probably in the whole of Lebanon. This guy had the best service in the whole of Lebanon, and there's still 10 people being squashed in a room. All of the crimes that these people are accused of are absolutely ridiculous. Some of these people don't even have a crime, like myself, in this prison for 4 days, having committed absolutely nothing. And I'm going to tell you how they responded when they let me go this morning. Like, these people are absolutely sick. Even the Israelis would have compensated you. Even the Israelis, if they took you in for their interrogation afterwards, they pay for an Uber to your place, they probably pay for a hotel, and they may even give you compensation. Like literally any country in the world, if you arrest anybody, I can't even fucking think. Unless maybe some countries in Central Africa are incredibly poor countries, but for the most part, you would be compensated in some way, right? So I continued on my trend. I refused to drink and I refused to eat anything. So as I've said, the last time I had anything to drink was at 12 o'clock on the 27th of November. That's 4 days ago. I've had nothing to drink. So all the things you hear about you'll die after 3 days without drinking is total nonsense. The doctor said you can actually go for 36 days in the right climate without any hydration whatsoever. So anyway, the first day I wasn't given a toothbrush, I wasn't given anything. So by this point it was 2 days without brushing my teeth or showering. I absolutely stank. And then I got 3 minutes to use the cold water. I didn't have a towel, so I had to use the shirt off my back to dry myself. In fact, no, the first time I just got into my clothes, the same smelly clothes, just wet. And then the day before, so yesterday, or was it the day after before that? I can't even remember now. Time is just meaningless at this point. I did have another shower, and then this was at the point where after many interviews with the interrogators going through my, sorry, I need to go back. I am really tired, but I need to try and be systematic here. So I refused to give them my codes originally, just like in Tripoli. Then after a few more interrogations, they gave me the solution, which is that you can change the passwords on your phone here to a new password, which I just changed to like 111 or something like this. And then I gave them access. And the reason is because I quickly realized all these homosexuals and the behavior of these people, and having already been transferred from 2 military bases and a Tripoli secret police station to now the Ministry of Defense, these people are completely sick. They have no sense of morality. And having learned how many days these other detained persons in my cell had spent there, I've realized that it was definitely the right thing to do. They would keep you in there, whether you're a Brit, an American, a Swiss, it doesn't matter on your nationality. They would keep you there for a very long time. Apparently, just before I arrived, there was a British guy called Tom, if you're watching this. He was kept there for 14 days in that room because he made a phone call outside a military base, or a video call outside a military base. He was kept there for 14 days. They also had an Australian in there. So this isn't, these are all nationalities that are being put in there just for their own sick sense of amusement. So I changed my phone passwords, gave them just the generic phone number that was made, and then they went through all my stuff. They went through my WhatsApp messages, and I have nothing to hide on my phone, of course, but they go through all your chats, and they're like, I have British humor, giggling with hotel owners about, this guy looks a bit like the Taliban, and then and they say, oh, you mentioned the Taliban, you've mentioned Mossad. I literally made a joke of, hopefully don't get assassinated by Mossad, or something like that. Just things that you have with your mate on a phone. They go through everything, and then they start questioning, why would you mention that? Why would you mention this? Have you been to Israel before in the past? Yes, I've been to Israel before in the past. You visit Palestine in the past? Yes, I've visited Palestine in the past. And then they even put, when the police report, they wrote it all in Arabic, of course, and then read it back to me in English and made me sign it. But of course, I would be signing anything. It just, the whole thing was just ludicrous. They wrote not even a particularly detailed account of what I had told them of what had happened up until this point. And then after that, completely unrelated, they put, and several years ago he visited Palestine. These people are completely fucking delusional, absolute sick psychopaths, right? And they're complete liars. That's the worst part of it. Like, you can be a sadistic sociopath, but I'll get to the lies in a minute. These people are fucking sick. Everything that comes out of their mouth is a lie. They'd be telling the people in the cell, oh, you'll be released the next day or whatever. Oh, tomorrow you can have this. And those Turkish guys have been there 120 days. The guy that had the accident, which you could maybe say is justified, 150 days. The doctor has been there 4 months for having firearms. In Lebanon, you're allowed to have firearms, but they were firearms that belonged to another person who admitted that, but they put him in jail anyway for 4 months. The Turkish Germans were in jail because one of their US dollar bills was fake. They had one fake US dollar bill. So they put them in jail for having fake money, and were in there 120 days. I don't know what the Lebanese guy was in there for. I don't know what the Iraqi guy was in there for. Um, and I don't know what the other, the Saudi Yemeni guy was in there for. I didn't ask him. But yeah, it's sick. And they said, they have no rights, essentially. They're told time and time again, you might be let out tomorrow, you might be let out next week, and still they're in there after all this time. Imagine being in a jail for around 5 months because you had a fake US dollar bill in your pocket. Imagine being in jail for 2 weeks. The British guy, I've just been let out after 4 days, 2 weeks, because you made a phone call near a military base. Everything's a military base in Lebanon. Like, how would you even know? If you're at a border, you're making a phone call, which is pretty normal. You don't have to make a phone call like inside the security, but you can make a phone call just generally anywhere. Imagine being put in jail for that. And I've seen the behaviour of these guys in the military bases in Tripoli. They're absolute psychopaths, completely sick the way they talk to people, swearing at you, pushing you up against a wall, grabbing your junk, all this kind of stuff. These people are fucking lunatics. And having seen, and I'm not going back on my opinion on Israelis. Don't get me wrong. Don't think I'm one of those people that's going to say, "Oh, Israel is great all of a sudden." But from my experience here in my life, from traveling to over 120 countries, more than most people have ever traveled, anywhere. Like, can't even articulate myself. More than most people have traveled. Lebanon and the way they treat people and their security services are the sickest people I've seen on my personal experience ever in the world in terms of military and how they treat people, putting people in jail for nothing, for fun, for amusement. So all kinds of other things happened where one of the Turkish guys said down in the basement they rape people. He said that. I mean, that's to be expected, right? In a jail, you've got 120 to 160 people in dungeons with no windows, no access to fresh air. All of the guards are homosexuals, all of them. Literally they got eyeliner like this, some of them, their nails are painted, they got fucking guns. Of course people are getting raped down there. So thank God I was lucky that I got put in a jail cell which is essentially paid for by the son of an influential millionaire. Like, if I was down in the jail downstairs, it would be absolutely insane. What else has happened? Yeah, during the interrogations, constant lies as you'd expect. Oh, you'll be out today if you give us the codes. That's not the case. I made a deal with them. It wasn't comedic. It was a legit deal. I said, look, I will give you, when I give you access to my phone, when I change the codes so they don't align to my other personal things on my phone, we're going to make a deal. I want compensation of some kind. I want you to at least pay for a hotel after keeping me in conditions, illegally arrested and detained for 4 days. They didn't do that, but we agreed they would buy me 6 Hogarden beers. And I know that sounds like a joke. These are formal interviewees. I know it sounds like a joke. The head of the entire detention centre, which is the general, a very well-educated man, obviously studied in England. He had the perfect accent. This guy is like super high grade, and he was referred to as the general. So I imagine he would have been a general. And they all said that they outrank, because this is the intelligence centre, the Ministry of Defence, even the colonels that treated me like horse shit in the military base before I went to the secret police station in Tripoli. So they are very high ranking. They all spoke very fluent English, but they said, look, if we don't find a problem, if there is no issue, and this was all done as a gentleman's agreement. This wasn't like, ha ha ha, just a bit of banter. He would get me a Hogarden and the other guy would get me 6. That was all agreed on. Hands were shaken. It was reiterated numerous times when I was taken back from a cell to the interrogation centre that they would get me this. They never did, of course. That was just a total bullshit lie. They didn't even give me, like, they even, I still got the fingerprint. Yeah, still got the ink on my fingers from when I had to give my fingerprint. They didn't even give me a cloth to wash that off. They didn't even take all the tape off of my tablets and stuff. They barely gave me enough time to pack stuff into my bag. Didn't even offer for me to use the bathroom before I left. I had to emphasize all of these things when they eventually let me go this morning. They didn't even offer to drive me to a place. I have to pay for everything off my own skin. So this Ministry of Defence is outside of Beirut. So they just dropped me on the road. They said, get one of these vehicles. If I didn't have any money on me, how would that work? Luckily, I had like £3 in local currency on me and my dollars, which were for Syria, but I'm not going to be able to break hundreds on the fucking local transport. And that was it. Didn't offer a hotel, didn't offer any sort of compensation, didn't even offer to drive me the 25 minutes to the hotel here that I've just arrived in. The only thing that I had to emphasize to get was, can you at least give me Wi-Fi now for 5 seconds so I can book a hotel here in Beirut? Because guess what? The Pope is arriving today. The Pope is arriving today. And because of this, apparently the people in the cell are hoping they get some sort of amnesty after 4 or 5 months in that tiny little jail cell from the Pope. The whole thing is absolutely batshit crazy. These people are absolutely sick. They're sick in the head, all of these people. So what else? Pretty much that's the end of the video. I wanted to make this and just I might upload other things later if I remember things, but just to give people an idea of what is happening and how sick these countries are, and how until you travel to places and you do things off of your own back, you can't have a accurate impression and depiction of cultures and people. Everyone's like, oh, Lebanon's always the victim. It's one of these countries that Israel is oppressing and persecuting. And I'm definitely not Israel's fan at all. Israel is still, now it's been upgraded to the second worst country for me in the world, and Lebanon is worse. Lebanon is worse for so many reasons, as I had time to think about it in terms of the interrogation. The Israelis would never put me in jail for that, because they have a brain. Israelis are smart. What purpose would they have? Firstly, Israelis probably know everything about you already, and they're certainly not using old school pens and paper to file things in some 1940s bureaucratic way. They're super advanced with their military defense and their tech. The idea that they would just pluck a tourist off the street because for their general amusement is generally not going to happen if you're a European. And if it did happen for maybe some justified suspicion, they're not going to keep you in there for 4 days. Within a second, they're smart enough to realize if they made a mistake or not. Just everything in Lebanon seems to take 1,000 years. The people are completely ignorant. Some of these people are high-ranking officers, and you look at them and you think, fuck me, this is someone that, wouldn't even be able to get a 20k job at Tesco's in the UK. It's absolute fucking nightmare. I'm so disgusted as well because, I've never thought Lebanon's like the best place to visit as a tourist, but in the 10 days that I was here before being detained, I had an okay time. It was fine. I saw a few interesting things, a nice castle. I enjoyed Tripoli. And then all of a sudden you just get taken off the street and treated like a dog for no reason, for their own amusement. And they don't even have the generosity or the intelligence to realize that they have the option, after alienating someone for so long and treating them so badly, to flip that. If they had honored the gentleman's agreement, even after keeping me in jail for 4 days, if they had apologized, they never apologized. All they said was, yes, it was a mistake. And that was it. No taxi to my hotel, not even driving me themselves to the hotel. Nothing offered at all. Just, oh, here's some water, not even bottled water, literally from the tap, and one of the sandwiches that they give all the generic prisoners, which I refused. I still haven't eaten anything, as I've said, or drunk anything. I'm not taking anything from those animals. You'd expect them to think, okay, well, instead of making this guy hate our country and our people for the rest of his years, which I absolutely do now, like 100%, I've lived long enough, I've been to enough places that I don't need to give them a second chance. How they've behaved now, they are the worst place I've ever been. And until someone beats that, they will stay pole position. Israel can be number 2. You have the option to change someone's perspective like that. Give them what you promised. You made a gentleman's agreement. Give the beer. On top of that, why don't you, put your boys in a little 4x4, the same 4x4 that drove me from Tripoli to Beirut, and drive me 25 minutes up the road to my hotel, or just pay the fucking $5 for an Uber because you've put someone in jail for 4 fucking days. You don't think that's right. No apology, not even an official piece of paper, which of course is for their own insurance, no doubt. They called the embassy, the British embassy useless. Also a bunch of wankers. They don't care. It's not even a British person that answers the phone. It's a Lebanese stooge, the Lebanese translator. The British don't care anymore because it's a complete globalized world. Everything's become so sick and twisted. I don't care. You're just a dog to them. So the only way you can retain your sense of pride, the sense of being a human, is to not allow them to take control of you, to not allow themselves, to not allow them to treat you like an animal. Every time they say fuck you, you say straight back to them, go fuck yourself. Anyway, so yeah, haven't obviously slept properly for 4 days. No water since 12 o'clock on the 27th. No food since the morning of the 28th. It's now around 2 o'clock on the 30th of November 2025. And that's my story. And just to reiterate, there is over 100 people, 120 to 160, I was told by the people in my cell, in the basement of the Ministry of Defence in Tripoli, in this detention centre. It's not a prison, it's a jail primarily for people that have committed political offences. They have the same in Tripoli, and no doubt they have the same in other cities around Lebanon. These people are absolutely fucking sick. They should get no support whatsoever. It's one thing supporting Palestine, but all of the people out there that are saying, oh, it's terrible what's happening in Palestine. It absolutely is. I've already said I don't like the Israelis, but don't go putting two and two together to make four and assume that all the other countries are in the same boat. The Lebanese are absolutely sick how they treat people of all nationalities. These people are lunatic psychopaths. I'll end on that.